nic nešahejte. Už jsme venku.
Jo, už jako, na nic nešahám, už na to nešahám.
Myslím tam,
no jo,
že
já
tam...
vám potřebuji ještě nahrát tu prezentaci.
Už jsme venku.
Už jsme venku.
Už jsme venku, jsme to museli
To je průšvih. No tak to já budu muset v průběhu zaimprovizovat teda. Protože teď mi pán řekl, že má prezentaci, který jsme nevěděli.
Já už jsem to pustil.
Dobrý, no tak já si to tam pak prostě strčím, až přijde jeho řada. Po přestávce. Po přestávce.
Today for this very special event. I'm delighted that NROS approached us to host this event to celebrate the completion of the 5-year Early Care for Children project. We are happy to host you here today. We really are. And importantly is you really have this opportunity to share experiences, share best practices from Czech Republic, where we are today, from Canada, my home country, from Austria and Norway. I want to extend a very special welcome to Margaret Leslie, the Director of Child and Family Services at the Canadian Mothercraft Society, who will be joining us from my hometown, Toronto. Welcome, and welcome to all of you. And let me say how much we're looking forward to hearing from you and the other speakers about your experiences supporting children and families in need. The well-being of children is part of a broader effort in Canada to build a healthy and inclusive society where everyone has an equal chance to succeed. Canada is known for being a diverse and multicultural country. We consider diversity a source of our strength, a source of our creativity, our prosperity, our resilience. But we also know that to build inclusive policies and to make sure that those policies evolve with the situation as the situation in society changes, that takes effort and expertise. We've all witnessed and experienced ourselves, we've experienced the widespread impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're still experiencing those impacts. We've seen firsthand the impacts on physical and mental health of our families and communities. Like many of you, I'm a parent. I have children who are at home schooling for very long periods. I was worried about older members of my family. We all know what that feeling is. And we know, and the research tells us, and we've seen it in our own lives, that women, children, parents, particularly mothers, that they have been disproportionately affected during this period. So your efforts to understand these impacts, to share best practices, and to determine, importantly, to determine a range of effective actions, these are critically important to our collective recovery. So I want to thank you for the work that you're doing. I want to thank you for the impacts that you're having in your communities. And I'll just say that I am looking forward to hearing the results of the conversation today. So please enjoy your afternoon in Canada House, and I wish you a productive discussion. Thank you very much.
Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you as well on behalf of the NROS Foundation that implemented the early intervention for children in program in recent years. First of all, I would like to extend my thanks to Her Eminence Ambassador for opening the premises of the Canadian Embassy for this event. So thank you very much. And let me also extend my thanks to all the people from the Canadian Embassy for being active in preparation of this event that is a gala culmination of several years long work of the NGOs in the Czech Republic. Then, thank you very much, and let me present you with the bouquet of flowers. Well, let me also welcome officials from the non-for-profit organizations involved in this project. These are experts and specialists in the field of early intervention and crisis intervention. Let me also welcome my colleagues from the Civil Society Development Foundation, NROS, participating in this project. And let me also welcome all the viewers on the TV stream, both in the Czech Republic as well abroad. I am honored to be the first speaker, and I'm going to speak about the sum up of the project, divided into several parts. Well, obviously, we would like to give the proper space to various speakers, some of them being a remote distance place, and that's why we should kick off right away. Well, the project and the inspiration for the project got its roots back in 2014. And at that time, we acquired information from the fundraising event, Help the Children, and we realized that there are various deficiencies found in the Czech Republic, that the service in question is undersized, and the service is not accessible in various places, and that we lack crisis interventionists and assistants, people who would go to the homes of suffering children. So back in 2014, this was the beginning of the project, together with the Velux Foundations that funded the entire project. So thank you very much. My thanks go to Velux Foundations that provided funds for this project in the Czech Republic in the field of early intervention and crisis intervention. So the total of 27,333,603 Czech crowns were invested in the Czech Republic, more than €1 million. But obviously it is not sufficient still. We could enjoy a triple of such amount. So, Velux Foundations, thank you very much once again. Investments into future, that's the heading of the slide. The reason is that all the investments made in this service in recent years are really investments to the future, so that in the near future we will have less suffering children, less children at risk, children with good parents, parenting parents. So this is the investments to future. And let's continue. What was our aim? First of all, we wanted to strengthen the development and access to early intervention services for families with children at risk, be it mental, sensory, physical disabilities or combined disabilities, and also it was aimed at children at risk due to some pathological social phenomena or violence in the families. We also wanted to prevent placement of such threatened children into institutional care, which was a general practice in the past and has not yet been fully eliminated. We want that children of this group can remain in their natural environment. Why we wanted this aim to be fulfilled? Because the children and youth represent a very important target group of our foundation's work for many years. The two area of the early and crisis intervention have been insufficiently funded, lacking capacities. And what was also lacking was the concept of policy, and we have been working in a sort of vacuum. How we approach this project? We wanted to strengthen the capacity of these services. We also extended the access to such services, and we also wanted to transfer foreign experience. There were various stays abroad, discussions with foreign experts, and we also wanted to increase the awareness on this field. Also on the side of the general public, not only on the expert public. And we also try to support projects aimed at the direct care of such suffering children. Let's speak about the outcomes. Well, in total, we have supported 32 NGOs. It means the entities that implemented such care, and 64 supported projects. They were of longer period, dealing with a longer period, and projects that should work with the target group in a more intense way. It means families with children at risks. At the same time, we also made other calculations, and we realized that the total of 30,347 children were included into the early intervention services. Beautiful figure, and we are very grateful for such a great achievement, but we still know that it is not yet enough. At the same time, we also need to strengthen staff capacities, and we were able to increase by 67.83 FTEs for the service, which is not perhaps a big number, but still we regard it as a success of the generally undersized capacities. We also recorded 67,840 contacts with the client or child through various modes, field, chatting, or telephone, Skype, and the total of 62,407 hours of consultations were implemented. Within the preventive programs aimed at schools, for children in schools, we created various materials. We worked on campaigns, maps of crisis interventions, and the total number of children involved in these events was nearly 8,500 children. We have implemented 229 prevention programs at schools, and we have trained more than 700 workers. However, we also worked on the improvement of the expert know-how. We created various tools, especially for the future. We have created online methodology publications in websites, and there were 23 in total number. 22 participants went abroad for gain new knowledge and inspiration, and 254 seminars and 7 workshops were implemented, and this is a picture from one particular workshop that we have organized. What are the results of our activities? Well, the possibility of keeping children in their natural environment, namely families, was multiplied several times. At the same time, we managed to increase workplaces coverage, and we increased the capacities of services provided. We increased also the qualification and skills of the NGO staff. Also thanks to the fact that the funding considered their own selection. It means it was tailor-made according to their needs. We also succeeded to hand over or transfer foreign experience. We involved foreign experts. Several tens of people went abroad for foreign expert states. Foreign books were translated, and we also organized a specific conference. We may say that interdisciplinary cooperation was launched, and we do trust that in spite of the outcome, sometimes lower, sometimes bigger, it was very helpful. Another great achievement was the foundation of the Crisis Intervention Providers Association. This entity offers very important services to those in need in the Czech Republic, and it should also meet the function or fulfill the function of a methodological entity for the crisis intervention in future, and may provide also some lobbying activities for future legislation. It's a young association, but it works systematically and supports the crisis intervention network intensively. We also provided the Association of the Early Intervention, another very important entity in this field. And another opinion is, in my opinion, another very good success are the maps, where each and every respondent may find the closest crisis intervention options in their vicinity or around their domicile. So this is one example thereof. This is how the map looks like, and it's available on the website. And if you, for instance, get to the website of the Association of Early Intervention, so you may get to such a map. So it is an interactive map. We add various new services, be it in the field of crisis intervention, or if the child identifies home violence or domestic violence, so the child can just find their way through too. And it's linked to the geolocator, so in case that the child or children have such an application in their mobile, so they are brought to the nearest service of this kind. This is a very important and successful tool preventing the fatal impacts in case of a dysfunctional family with domestic violence, for instance, when the child requires a certain help. What comes next? What are the next steps? So this is a topic that will be elaborated furthermore by other speakers. On our behalf, NRO's behalf, well, I have to say that I'm very glad and grateful that this project was highly successful, that it brought to the table further information, and that we were able to further develop the needed services in individual regions. But still, the crisis and early intervention services are still lacking in the Czech Republic. On our behalf, on behalf of the NROS Foundation, let me assure you that we will do our best in the future. We will further support such services through some other grant schemes, I hope. And one important topic for the future is the support of multidisciplinary teams working in the early and crisis intervention field, psychological assistance, special psychotherapists, and other professions which are needed in order to provide such care in a comprehensive way and in a meaningful way. And I'm sure that we will dwell on this topic in the future. But for the time being, we've done a lot, and the specific efforts will be covered by further 3 speakers who are joining us from various kinds of the world, and they will tell us how they approach this field in their respective countries. Thank you very much for your attention right now, and in a while we will try to get connected with Miss Margaret Leslie, Director of the Child and Family Services with the Canadian Mothercraft Society Canada. She's the director of this Child and Family Services, and she's very much involved in the early intervention topic field. Thank you very much for my side, and we are now getting to see Ms. Margaret Leslie. Thank you very much.
Krátká zkouška zvuku. Hello, Margaret. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Great. So,
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can see you, and it's up to you now. You can play your presentation.
Thank
you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone for the kind invitation to be part of your event today, particularly for Tatiana's help. And thank you, Ambassador, for your warm welcome as well. I hope one day all of us will be able to meet in person. In this short presentation, I'm going to describe a model of early intervention for young children and families at high risk in Toronto. Toronto is a very large urban city, population now over 4 million. And I will also describe the work that is still to be done, in my view, in the area of early intervention and infant and early childhood mental health in Canada. Let me first give you a very brief overview of my organization. As I said, it's based in Toronto. Since 1931, we have our 90th anniversary this year. The Canadian Mothercraft Society has been a leader in promoting healthy infant and early childhood development and in supporting families. Mothercraft is a multi-service, not-for-profit organization delivering childcare, family resource programs, service navigation support, training for early childhood educators, as well as early interventions to families with children under the age of 6. We believe that infancy and the early years of childhood are critical periods for neurodevelopment and for the development of secure attachment, both of which are critical for positive health and mental health throughout the lifespan. At Mothercraft, we believe that how we care for infants, young children, and their families has a lasting impact on the health of all Canadians. Mothercraft delivers its early intervention services through the program called Breaking the Cycle. Breaking the Cycle is funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada. It's an early childhood mental health program that promotes the development and mental health of infants and young children whose mothers are struggling with complex conditions of risk, including addiction, substance use, mental health problems, and interpersonal violence. Because all of the children we see at Breaking the Cycle also have exposures to alcohol and other substances in the prenatal period, we are also a fetal alcohol spectrum disorder prevention and early intervention program with FASD assessment and diagnostic services. We have delivered Breaking the Cycle now for 26 years, and we've conducted ongoing evaluation and research throughout that period. So I'll provide a little bit more detail about the program, and then I will tell you what we have learned. So the children and mothers we see at Breaking the Cycle experience very complex conditions of risk for neurodevelopment and mental health. We know from the histories of the mothers we see that when they were young children, they experienced these same conditions of risks in their own childhoods, but received no interventions or adequate support in order to overcome these conditions. So they experienced maltreatment themselves, exposure to parental addiction, mental illness and domestic violence, poverty, isolation, and other traumas. We know that the mothers that we see were once these children, and that the relationship-based early intervention during the early years provides an opportunity to break intergenerational transmission of trauma to her new infant. Mothercraft delivers Breaking the Cycle through a cross-sectoral integrated service partnership with 8 other community partners, organizations, who deliver a range of services that are required by the children and the mothers we see. The partners deliver services that include child protection, public health, probation and parole, family medicine, addiction and mental health services, developmental pediatrics, midwifery, childcare, and children's mental health. The issue of engagement of mothers who use substances in service and removing barriers to care is critical for this population of mothers and infants. The mothers are often fearful and mistrustful of professionals and systems because of their previous interactions with our service system and also with professionals. Many, for instance, have lost custody of other children due to their substance use and other issues. So breaking the cycle, the aim of breaking the cycle is to be able to engage women in a different kind of experience with their new baby and be able to receive these early intervention services. We deliver breaking the cycle through a single access model to promote engagement. So instead of mothers traveling to multiple different organizations and institutions for the services that they require, the mothers and children come to one location in Toronto, and the professionals travel to that spot to deliver the services to the mothers and children. It enhances access to services for the mother. The program space is non-institutional, warm, welcoming, and safe for both mothers and children. So it promotes engagement. With our community partners, these are the services that we deliver for mothers and their children at Breaking the Cycle. There are services for mothers, addiction, mental health counseling. There are services for children, childcare, developmental clinic, and there are services for the mother and child together, a range of parenting services. We also, very importantly, offer a core component of basic needs support. Nutritional and food supplementation. We serve meals here and provide a food bank. We offer clothing, and we offer support with cost of transportation to facilitate access for families. In addition to our center-based service, we offer a home visitation program for every mother and child, as well as a street outreach program directed to homeless, pregnant women who are using substances. We consider that we have 3 clients in our early intervention service. The child is a client, the mother is a client, and their relationship is a client. The child receives interventions, the mother receives counseling directed to her, and they receive interventions together that is directed to their relationship. So since we launched Breaking the Cycle in 1995, we have produced a number of reports and papers to report on our evaluation and research on the effectiveness of this model of early intervention. After the first 10 years, our research confirmed that this model was effective in engaging mothers, hard-to-reach mothers, in services earlier in pregnancy, and this engagement resulted in more positive birth outcomes for children, including higher birth weights and decreased exposure to substances for the fetus. We also found enduring impacts of early engagement and early intervention. We found that mothers engaged earlier had higher rates of addiction treatment completion and higher rates of child custody than mothers who were engaged later. On pre- and post measures, these mothers reported significantly higher levels of parenting satisfaction and confidence, significantly higher levels of quality of attachment, and decreased levels of maternal hostility, significantly higher levels of social support, and increased knowledge of community services as a result of early intervention. We also found that with early intervention, children with prenatal alcohol and other substance exposure were progressing along a typical developmental pathway. A more recent study that was funded by the Canadian Institutes of Health Research allowed us to examine our early intervention model with a comparison group to understand the mechanisms of change we found in the earlier study. And in this research, we compared Breaking the Cycle with a program in another city in Canada where mothers with their young children also received addiction treatment. The children received child care in the comparison group, but they did not receive early interventions, and there was not an intervention for the relationship. There was no parenting intervention. Both groups improved significantly on measures of addiction severity, and both groups increased their confidence to resist substances. But for the Breaking the Cycle mothers only, There was a significant change in the expected and appropriate direction on measures of depression, anxiety, and relationship capacity. There were no significant changes on these measures for comparison group mothers. So the study confirmed that the primary mechanism of change for the breaking the cycle mothers was the dyadic, mother-child, relationship-based early intervention model. As part of breaking the cycle, we deliver a domestic violence intervention, since it is almost 90% of women, of the mothers at breaking the cycle, have experienced or are currently experiencing interpersonal violence. The intervention is called Connections, and over the last 5 years, we have conducted a national replication of Connections in 30 communities across Canada with the support of the Public Health Agency of Canada. And our evaluation of that large initiative found high levels of fidelity in the replication of the intervention, which was replicated in community-based projects that are funded in the same way as Breaking the Cycle through the Public Health Agency of Canada. We also found that mothers who participated in the group intervention had significant increases in self-esteem, self-efficacy, ability to feel closeness in relationships, ability to depend on others in relationships, and understanding healthy and unhealthy relationships. There were also significant decreases in anxiety in relationships and in parenting stress. So we have many priorities in early intervention over the next years, but I will just discuss 3. Despite the overwhelming evidence of the neurodevelopmental and psychosocial importance of the early years for lifelong health and mental health outcomes, there has not been a corresponding recognition of prevention and early intervention services in mental health policy. Investments in early intervention and prevention understandably compete with much more acute disorders of youth and adults. But investments in early intervention will, over the long term, reduce the prevalence of more acute disorders later in life, in the lifespan. We know which infants and young children are most at risk for mental health and neurodevelopmental problems, and we know how to intervene. So we will continue this work to continue to work towards this integration of infant and early childhood mental health into the mental health system of care. There's also a need for integration of policy structures that support early intervention. Early interventions for infants and young children are necessarily dyadic, involving children and parents together. The risks to the mental health of infants and young children arise within the relationship, within a caregiving relationship, and early interventions and treatments must also be delivered in the context of a caregiving relationship. Infants and young children do not come to our services alone. They come with their parents, and their parents often also require treatments and interventions, as well as the infants and children. So except for a very few examples, our adult systems of care and policy and our children's system of care and policy continue to be siloed and separate, and fragmented in most jurisdictions in Canada. And this presents barriers to the delivery of early intervention services for the highest risk and most vulnerable families, in which the infant requires services, the parent requires services, and the relationship requires services. So currently the system is that there would be 3 or 4 different ministries that would be responsible for each of those different pieces, creating administrative burden on organizations. I'm happy to say that the one exception to that siloed approach to early intervention is the Public Health Agency of Canada's Community Action Program for Children and Canada Prenatal Nutrition Program. These are examples of a policy and funding structure that does support integrated and dyadic early intervention and early programs, early intervention services across Canada. So CAPC was Canada's response in the early 1990s to the UN Declaration on the Rights of the Child. CAPC and CPNP programs are embedded in communities across Canada and engage children and families experiencing conditions of vulnerability who face a range of barriers to health equity: low income, low education, newcomer families, single parents, people in remote communities, and those struggling with substance use issues and domestic violence as well. A second piece of work for early intervention over the next years has to do with the process of truth and reconciliation in our country. The process of truth and reconciliation with the first people in our country in response to the harms that our first people experienced due to colonization. In the report that they issued in 2015, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada documented the history and lasting impacts of the Canadian Indian residential school system on Indigenous students and their families. From the mid-1800s to the 1990s, approximately 150,000 Indigenous children aged 4 to 16 were removed from their parents and communities and placed in residential schools operated by Canada in partnership with various churches. The goal of residential schools was to assimilate children in the schools, to assimilate Indigenous children into Canadian society. And the Commission heard evidence that children in the school experienced abuse, trauma, some never returned home to their families and remained missing, and some died. This year, Canadians have been shocked, actually within the last number of months, Canadians have been shocked and saddened by discoveries of mass unmarked graves of buried children on the grounds of residential schools. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada concluded the school system amounted to cultural genocide. How does this relate to early intervention and the families that we serve? Historical trauma theory posits that populations that are historically subjected to long-term mass trauma, such as colonialism, slavery, genocide, exhibit a higher prevalence of disease even several generations after the original trauma occurred. Trauma is transmitted across generations through the parenting relationship. Historical trauma theory helps us understand the trauma responses of mothers that originated generations before them. In our program in Toronto, between 25% and 40% of mothers we see are Indigenous women, mothers, struggling with substance use and mental health problems as a result of this trauma. So early intervention provides an opportunity and will provide an opportunity for healing for both mother and children, breaking the intergenerational cycle of trauma of Indigenous families that originated with Canada's residential school system. And this part of the work of reconciliation will continue in years to come in partnership with our Indigenous partners. And finally, the impact of COVID-19 will be, I'm sure, something that we will be learning about and responding to over the next years. We don't yet fully understand what the impact of COVID-19 will be on infants and young children and their families, but we do know that the impacts will be the greatest on those infants and young children at highest risk and living in the most vulnerable families. The isolation from in-person direct contact, services and supports, the closure of schools and childcare centers for long periods of time, those are protective environments for children and for parents. These resulted in increased rates of domestic violence, parental substance use and mental health problems, and increased rates of child maltreatment. So while early intervention services continued to be delivered virtually during COVID, the limitations of this method for high-risk families over the long term has been recognized. And finally, just a slide to highlight the primary components of early intervention for infants and young children and families at risk. The first being safety. Safety is the opposite of trauma. So for traumatized populations, all of the treatment, the core of the treatment must include the safety of both the mother, parents, and the child. Supporting a mother's relationship with her child means helping her learn how to protect her child from the kind of experiences that caused her pain. Using a trauma-informed approach is important for us as service providers, as well as for the outcomes to the families that we see, and to understand that trauma is a core issue for people. The concept of reduction of harm, both to mothers and to children impacted by substance use. We, at Breaking the Cycle, consider reducing harms to women and mothers as a result of their substance use, but we also consider ways to reduce harms to children exposed to their mother's substance use. And finally, connection and relationships. Attention to connection and relationships at all levels of service. The relationship between the parent and the child, the relationship between the parent and us as a clinician, as the service provider, and then also to recognize the importance of the relationship among clinicians of different sectors and among professionals as important to the outcomes to infants and children as well. So with that, I thank you very much, and especially for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Margaret. It was very nice that you can join us. Thank you again, and you can stay if you want. It would be nice. Thank you. Já bych ráda poprosila.
And now I would like to ask the next speaker for the field of early intervention, namely Ms. Jitka Barlová, director of the Society for Early Intervention branch in Prague. So let me welcome you, and let us download your presentation, and then we may start right away. Ms. Barlová is the representative of the Early Intervention Society. Well, we do have the presentation on the screen now. Well, very good afternoon. Perhaps the mic is too high for me, so to say. Is it all right? Can you hear me? Yes, okay. Very good afternoon. My name is Jitka Barlová, and I'm here to tell you something about our cooperation with the Andros Foundation and what kind of support we received also through the Velux funds for the families with disabled children. Well, to start with a few information about our society. We are in action for 31 years. We are active in 7 offices across 11 regions, and we are dealing with the family with sight impairment, impaired children, as well as physical and mental and combined disabilities. Well, we received the support from the Andros Foundation since 2014, and we wanted to increase the capacities of the workplaces we work in. We wanted to support various specific conferences. We also received a long-term support of professional education, for organization of various conferences, and throughout the time we felt to be highly supported by all people working in the Andros Foundation. Well, now I would like to show you a short video. Hello, my name is Jana, and I was born with a great serious sight impairment. And my parents were lucky enough to be able to enjoy the early intervention. Early intervention was originated in the 80s when volunteers started work in the kind of families that I live in. And also the early interventionist profession was created, and later on various other organizations were created aimed at supporting families with other disabilities in their children. And now our organization is one of the biggest providers of its kind in the Czech Republic. It is active in 10 regions, and it may help you as well. This is aimed at families with children with certain disabilities from 0 to 7 years of age. Expert assistance can be found by more than 600 families per year. And throughout the years, it's thousands and thousands children who enjoy this assistance. Thanks to the involvement of this society, I could study at grammar school. I'm an interpreter and translator. I love music. I play piano, and my life is a full-fledged life. And I hope that the early care services can be provided to the highest possible number of children like me. And this is the contact, early intervention for more than 30 years with you. Well, this is a video that we used for celebrating 30 years of our existence in the Czech Republic. And in spite of the fact that the early intervention is present for quite a long time, we still are faced with serious problems. As mentioned before, well, it's still lacking capacities of workplaces, low level of awareness in the general and expert public, insufficient funds and finance that are due to the lacking capacities, and obviously a very limited capacity for development planning. I wanted to mention some key factors, for instance, waiting time to access to this service of early intervention. Well, according to our research, there is the waiting time up to 225 days for autistic children. For children with sight impairment, the waiting time is up to 106 days. And for children with physical, mental, and combined disabilities, these children have to wait for nearly 250 days. And this is very difficult. And also the quality of the service providers is becoming more difficult. It is very important when the early intervention service starts for disabled children. Well, obviously, we may use school statistics about the mentioned children. We may say that in total figures, the prevalence of such children can be similar also in children up to 7 years of age. Well, this equals that only 14% of children with disabilities below 7 years of age may exceed the services. Obviously, in various regions, there are various differences. The same quality, the same speed cannot be applied in all regions in the Czech Republic. Access to the expert assistance is limited by capacities of workplaces, capacities of social services. In in our branches in Prague, Central Bohemia, and Karlovy Vary regions, we could provide by 151 better services to these children, and therefore 151 children have a better start to their life. We could also pay attention to the various projects. So this is also about various materials. We have created a special cartoon for these families. People who do not read publications or books may read these comics, and when they are waiting for various health services. And these comics cover family histories, early intervention, and this is better accessible for both general public and expert public. We also could use the translations of publications provided by the Andrews Foundation, and we also used various other possibilities, for instance, meeting experts from abroad. The biggest efficiency of the entire support can be seen in the fact that an expert intervention could be provided to these families on time. Obviously, the sooner we start with these services, the better for the child. The early intervention service is always to be inclusive. It should develop confidence and trust of both children and parents, and it is a paved way to inclusive education. In such a way, the parents may better grasp the capacities and abilities of their children in need. Such solutions are not of temporary nature. Thanks to the projects, they may be regarded as long-term structural changes. This can be proved in figures for the Early Intervention Society. And in the start, we started with 550 families, and 5 years later, so this figure reached nearly 1,000 families. We were able to get these capacities to regional networks, and this proves that this change is of structural and long-term nature. What are the challenges for the future in the Czech Republic? We are still fighting the poor awareness in the society. Not each and every family must opt for the early intervention service as the only way, but each and every family with a child at risk should know, it should be informed about early intervention services. Sufficient capacities should be built across all the regions and give a chance to all affected families to obtain this assistance. And one wish from fairy tale world, intergovernmental cooperation of three ministries, Ministry of Labour and Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education. So such cooperation is highly needed. Thank you very much. We thank you as well for the presentation of Ms. Pavlova from the Society of Early Intervention. And now I'd like to give the floor to another colleague from this field, namely Mr. Siegfried Holtschuster from Austria. He's a specialist who, together with Jitka, is member of the board of the Council of Early Childhood Intervention. So let me welcome you. And now give me just a moment for bringing the presentation of Mr. Schuster on the screen.
okay now?
Okay.
Do you need my assistant? Okay. So
Make it.
it's yours here, just here. Yeah.
Dobre den. Good afternoon. I'm coming from Austria, and I'm coming on an invitation of Jitka Balova. I'm representing Early Aid, the European Association on Early Childhood Intervention. Early childhood intervention, we heard a little bit of Margaret, what it is. It's all about families. Now I will tell you something about Early Aid. Early Aid was founded in 1988 by parents, representatives, professionals and scientists. And the goals of Early Aid was improving the quality of life of children with special needs and their families, stimulating the growth of development of early childhood intervention services in Europe, promoting the values of ethics of early childhood intervention, and increasing the knowledge and expertise in the field of ECI. I will say ECI in the future. You see the aims are getting more. We are all volunteers on this field. We are a European network. My colleagues are over Europe, and we are working on these activities. The most important thing is that we initiate the scientific research in the field of early childhood intervention, getting people together, making projects, and I will present to you some of this. Early Aid and the Myth of Sisyphus. Albert Camus wrote an essay with this title. In this essay, he says, "The absurd arises from the confrontation of the person who asks and the world who is silent in an unreasonable way." In general, a Sisyphus task means a task impossible to fulfill. I will tell you why. We have a website, Early Aid EU. We have over 600 registered members all over the world, not only Europe. And we have also followers on Facebook and Instagram. If you are interested, you can get all information about the European way of early childhood intervention on this website. Now to the last projects. We were involved in this VET project, Vocational Educational Training for Early Intervention, with 7 partners and 4 countries. There were project partners in Turkey. There was the University of Minho in Portugal and Association of Paralysia Cerebral de Praga, an early childhood intervention center, and some universities, also the Gazi University, well known in Turkey. And the aim was to strengthen the competencies of physiotherapists about new approach in early intervention. And we made a syllabus for these physiotherapists, and they were in all of these 7 countries. and they were shown how we work with early intervention in Europe. There are some photos from there. There was Avapace project with 5 partners from 4 countries, Croatia, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and early 8. The aim was to develop a training program to improve the implementation of family-centered early care practices for children with cerebral palsy. Also pictures from there. And the last project, because all COVID was coming, and after that the projects were only online. So the last project was Agora, and in this project also the Velux Foundation was involved. We had 7 partners from 7 countries: Slovakia, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Belgium, and ESPD and Early Aid. ESPD is the European Association for Service Providers, and the goal was to facilitate the implementation of strategies, ensuring the development of appropriate early childhood intervention systems at both local and national level. It is expected that as a result of the Agora Early Intervention Project, practical guidelines and tools will be developed to stimulate systemic and legislative changes in the area of early childhood intervention in the partner countries. And you will see we have developed a guidebook for professionals in different languages. There are the partners of this project. We had, for example, in Slovakia, we had a roundtable with the Ministers of Health, Education and Social Services in collaboration with a member of the European Parliament in 2018. And there are some results and outputs from this project. In each country there was done a country report and summary report for all participant countries. And the situation is in all the countries nearly the same. Limited financial resources, especially was concerns NGO services providers, limited opportunities for personal development, limited or absent cross-sectoral cooperation, lack of data and information, lack of professionals and public awareness about early childhood intervention. We translated the original version of Portuguese guidebook of professionals in many different languages. I brought with me some of this. This is the Slovakian, so you can read it very good. And I have also Bulgarian and Hungarian and Ukrainian and Russian edition with me. So in the break, maybe you can look at these books. In the time of COVID, we planned to make trainings with trainers for early childhood intervention, and we had a very great congress in Ukraine in 2014, and after that we continuing our support to these parents. We had this Kharkiv conference, and we trained the trainers for professionals there. In COVID-19 situation, we had multiple online trainings in Bulgaria and Tajikistan 2020, and it goes on, this time of education. So what's important for us to know about early childhood intervention in the Czech Republic? We heard something from Margaret from Canada. We have a little different way of making early childhood intervention. So I will show you the definition for us. What is early childhood intervention? Putting together an evidence-based comprehensive system to provide parents the time and energy and knowledge and skills to engage their children in everyday child learning opportunities that promote and enhance both child and parent confidence and competence. It's from Dunst, and he's a well-known expert on this field. You can see there are some points who Margaret said, but if you read it very detailed, you can see that for us it's not the child in the center, it's the family. That's the difference, the big difference. Children with disabilities are entitled to active participation in all aspects of family and community life, require equal opportunities in order to fulfill their rights, and should be treated with dignity at all times. Children with disability are best cared and nurtured with their own family environment. That's a very important sentence. And they should never be institutionalized solely on the grounds of disability. State parties must protect children with disabilities from discrimination and provide access to a range of services and supports which are specifically designed to them achieve their full potential. It's right in the general Assembly resolution. So, research underlining contemporary early childhood practices. There are more points, experiences, learning opportunities that enhance development, how children learn. Parent-mediated learning opportunities that enhance child and parent competence and confidence. The parents are the key. Why are the parents the key? Do you know why? The parents. If you go to a physiotherapist or something, the children works with this specialist 1 hour, 2 hours a week, and then the parents are 80% with their child. And when the parents learn how to do it in the best way, they can learn the child over this time very much. Practitioner use of capacity building and family systems practices building resilience. There should be somebody, not only the child, also the family and the community, all together should work on these aims. Parents are the key to the development and well-being of their own young children. Parents have a special social-emotional bond or attachment to their children that no one else can replace. Parents are the most powerful influence in the lives of their young children, even in their time when their children is limited by work or other responsibilities. Parents' unique capability to influence their child's developmental learning comes from the fact that they are the ones most likely to be there when their children are ready to learn. Not always when you go to a specialist, the child wants to learn. You know that. The opportunities parents have to interact with and influence their children's developments are far greater than the opportunities that any other professionals or adults could ever have. This is a sentence made by parents. When my son first got diagnosed, we knew we weren't the first, but we felt alone. So here you can see the child, the family, the school, the court, health, education, social services, child protection, practices, time, legislation. There is some field around this child to be recognized. And if you want to go into detail, you have a microsystem, a mesosystem, an exosystem, a macrosystem, and a chronosystem. In the middle is the child. Around this child, his family, school, peers, health services, religious organizations, daily care, neighborhood, playground. They are interacting between and they're interacting all together. Then you have the wider field, extended family and neighbors, school board, government, social services, mass media, parents' economic situation. That's the next, the exosystem. And there is the culture, the ideologies. And then chronosystem. We have seen it in the last times with COVID, environmental changes that occur over the life course. So, early age says now there is a shift of paradigms. Early childhood intervention has shifted from viewing the child with special needs as the key recipient of services to viewing the child's parents, caregivers and family as the principal recipients of services and supports. There are different types of parenting support. Provided by early childhood practitioners and other social network members that provide parents the time, energy, knowledge and skills to engage their children in everyday child learning opportunities that promote and enhance both child and parent confidence and competence. There are 7 key principles of early intervention. Maybe you know that, but infants and toddlers learn best through everyday experiences in interactions with familiar people and familiar context. All families with the necessary supports and resources can enhance their children's learning and development. The primary role of a service provider in early childhood is to work with and support family members and caregivers in children's lives. The early intervention process, from initial contacts through the transition, must be dynamic and individualized, reflected the child's and the family members' preferences, learning styles and cultural beliefs. There must be an individualized family service plan. Outcomes must be functional and based on children's and families' needs and family-identified priorities. The family priorities, needs and interests are addressed most appropriately by a primary provider who represents and receives teams and community support. Intervention with young children and family members must be based on explicit principle, validated practices, best available research, and relevant laws and regulations. And if you read this very well, you will see that we want to go to the families, make their family environment this work of early childhood intervention. There is no such thing as a baby. Some pictures. There is no such thing as a baby. There is a baby and someone. And at least the life of a child is full of opportunities for learning. In many different parts of everyday family and community life, children encounter thousands of situation-specific experiences, opportunities or events that involve either planned or spontaneous interaction with people and the physical environment. In any particular place or situation, a child may be either encouraged or discouraged from participation and learning by the people, materials, the objects in the setting. And something for thinking. We are guilty of many errors and many faults, but our worst crime is abandoning the children, neglecting the fountain of life. Many of the things we need can wait. The child cannot. Right now is the time his bones are being formed, his blood is being made, and his senses are being developed. To him we cannot answer tomorrow. His name is today. Thank you for your time.
Děkujeme za váš příspěvek a
Thank you very much for your contribution, and having listened to this presentation, so we have finalized the first part of our conference. Now we will sport break, and in the next session we will deal with the crisis intervention services. Well, we have 10 minutes break. You may get refreshed, and in 10 minutes' time we will resume our work. Thank you very much.
Vracíme se zpět.
So we have reconvened, and I'd like to welcome another speaker who unfortunately is not the director for child's hearing, Mrs. Jana Fenslova. She rang in the morning with apologies. She had to go to hospital. But Mrs. Alena Šváchová, who has managed the Velux project in the past years, will replace her and make her presentation. So it's gonna be improvisation even for us. Alena will be reading the presentation. I'll be showing the slides, and let's hope we will be compatible. It's gonna be an experience. So the last contribution to the early intervention topic. So I hand over to Alena. Thank you very much. Hello, good afternoon. So, TAM, Center for Child's Hearing, program that provides for systemic change. Briefly about the organization. The organization has been established in 1990. It was the initiative of parents with non-hearing children with the aim to provide information and provide for better quality of their life. They are a national organization. They work with 500 to 600 client families per year. They run 4 registered social services, advisory centers, and they implement long-term projects. Personal experience has been inspired by Canada. Back in 1997, I found out that in Canada they've used a sign bear to educate children with impaired hearing. I asked for the bear. We received 2 bears as a present, and we started to use bear for methodological and didactical materials. We keep using it. We received materials in application, and now we create animated version of it. So these are the bears who will be passed over to Her Excellency the Ambassador as a present today. So Mrs. Barlova gave us training. We know how to use the bears now. So it's gender-balanced pair of bears. So the project implemented within the program helped us to promote primary diagnostics, screening of hearing problems of newly born babies is not enacted. We have a decree. We promoted cooperation with maternity wards, and we printed and distributed the cards for parents. It is hearing card we've created in cooperation with doctors. Neonatologists pass them to the parents and explain to them how to monitor hearing, when a next examination will be provided, and if they detect possible hearing impairment, they provide parents with the contact to TAM organization. So outputs of the project bring in positive steps. We strive to diagnose hearing impairment early, and we try to implement standardized steps in the care about a child with hearing impairment. International cooperation and education is an important part of the project. Our project included an internship in London and exchange of information and translation of document that is used by internationally recognized therapists, logopedists and special pedagogues and children. So we translate it into Czech and we distribute the translated documents. Early care and its development. It's rather specific in the Czech Republic. 100% of providers of this care are NGOs. However, the service is highly professional because of traditional close cooperation of individual organizations aimed at a high quality of service and anchoring of the service in society. Organizations are methodologists. They are not led by the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs. Methodological procedures are dealt with by means of intense regional cooperation, and the result of it is a high professionality where we look and pursue systemic solutions in legislation. We strive to guarantee finance and funding and provide for education and international cooperation. The NGOs have to present their quality, efficiency and economic benefit, professionality. They are irreplaceable for families with handicapped children. During the pandemics and fast change, it is even more difficult to provide the service, maintain the quality and perspective of the service. This will be a challenge. The biggest challenge of early care in the Czech Republic, I don't dare to predict after the past 2 years. However, we learned to accept challenge. We don't look for guidances and orders. We seek solution in an active way. I believe that it is important to face challenges together. And the more the lay general public and expert public is familiar with early care, the more probable it is that they will engage in an active way. It will be difficult to finance the service. It's disproportionate, it's different in various regions. And if we want to maintain high quality and professional feature of the service, we shouldn't give up. We have to really provide education, structure methodologies and implement new procedures. Our activities are a proof of the fact that NROS and other organizations seek new challenges and are able to implement the targets even in difficult times.
Děkuji.
I'd like to thank Jana Fenslema and Alena Šváchová for the contribution on behalf of the TamTam Center. And now I'd like to pass the floor to Eva Wolfova, Director of the Crisis Center for Children and Family in Southern Bohemian region. Very good afternoon. My name is Eva Volodova. I am from the Crisis Center for Children and Family in the town of České Budějovice. And within the support from the NROS Foundation, we were dealing with the project More Assistance for Children Who Suffer. So the program or the project was implemented in the period 2019 July till 2021 June. A few words about our organization. We are an NGO, and we are in this area, active in this area for 18 years, and we offer assistance to families in very difficult situations. And we have also registered a social service called Crisis Intervention, and we also work with families within the agenda of Children's Social and Legal Protection Authority. Well, we try to link the two together, but it is sometimes very difficult because when it comes to the funding, so you have to report very exactly how much money goes to what area. Nevertheless, we succeeded with separating the crisis intervention from some acute assistance crisis or acute events. And obviously, there may be a certain overlapping of the follow-up area care that cannot be given within the framework of the crisis intervention. We provide psychosocial consultancy. We offer rather short-term interventions, and in the adolescent children, we are able to provide a bit longer care. And now what about, should I say, about our project? We approach the project within the context of human rights, or the rights when we focused at. It was, for instance, about the support of the healthy environment so that the child may be living in a safe and healthy environment without some maltreatment, preventing child placement into hospitals or other institutions. And next area was the incorporating children and their families into decision-making processes, how to approach it so that the child is safe, so that the child is sufficiently involved in such processes. Together with this, we also wanted to bring back competences to the families so that the families are able to resume the capacity of taking decisions. In some development projects, families, parents rather, want to skip their own responsibility and put it on the shoulders of institutions. Well, this was another area when we wanted to support parents to be able to accept their own responsibility, stand for the child's interests. Next field of our support was the area when the child has to go through a certain difficult period in their lives. We support young children, adolescents, in case they suffer with some psychological problems. Children may be afraid of the poor school results, and they are afraid that they will not be able to find their place on the labor market later on. And our psychotherapists and experts then help such children in a longer period. We are in contact with schools and parents, and in case that the parents do not function properly, so we replace their role to a certain extent. And very important area of our work is the interdisciplinary cooperation. It's a long-term nature aspect. We know that this field is rather fragmented. Experts do not communicate too much. Safety of the child within families, that's another field of our work, but I will come to this later. Now, a few more details on the following aspects. Working with parents. So we focused on the divorce and post-divorce support in families. We provided crisis intervention to parents. We also offered consultancy services towards so that they tend to achieve an agreement so that parents are able to resume their responsibilities and strengthen their competencies and take a decision in favor of the child. And this is also linked with the involvement of the child into the decision-making process, because our experiences are such that very often the child becomes a certain tool in the divorce of their parents. The point is that we want to know the opinion of the child so that the child gets certain room, but at the same time, the child's opinion must never be misused, so that the child is still remaining in a safe environment. Next area of our work is the work with children. So here we provide therapy to children and adolescents. We have quite good experiences here. And one of the benefits is that thanks to our support, the child or the adolescent child who suffers with some psychological problems doesn't have to be placed into institutional care institution. And obviously for the child client, this is very important. And the final area of our work is the team and interdisciplinary cooperation. And in this respect, we initiate various meetings of experts and other stakeholders active in this field. We just delineated competences. We agreed on the way we communicate, we transfer information, and in general how the work is to run. As for the parties involved, so we discussed this with psychiatrists, then legal and social protection of child authority and others. A few words about the results of the project. We have seen qualitative changes in the respective children and adolescents. The clients became calmer, their mood improved, communication and relationships also were enhanced. Communication with their peers was also better. And another interesting success was that especially adolescent clients did not leave the school, for instance, because such children, when in depression, for instance, or in other troubles, sometimes do not want to go to school, and we had to discuss it also with the school authority so that the situation is taken into account properly. And high school, for instance, the child can complete the high school learning. And it is true that many of our young clients started to be happier, new hairstyle. They were able to better organize their leisure time or time in general. They were able to understand better their emotions, how they feel. And they also better understood the importance of the self-care, for instance. And thanks to the out of hospital care, so the number of our clients who needed hospitalization decreased. How do we understand the needs where we should help? I've pointed out 4 basic ones. First of all, we want to be involved within the integrated rescue system so that if there is some dramatic situation and loss of close one in a family, so there is a need to receive the client as early as possible. In a family where an event happened, so we should be informed as quickly as possible so that we could focus on the given family and help as much as possible, and therefore we need also the link to the integrated rescue system. Perhaps we could help with accompanying the given person back home and then discuss their needs. Next, the second area is that of self-harm in the adolescent children. This is perhaps also affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Thanks to the support from NROS Foundation and Velux Foundations, we were able to increase our capacities and can work with a higher number of children clients. And we do hope that further opportunities will appear. And in this respect, we also have noticed the nutrition disorders cases. Sometimes it was very difficult to approach certain children, but in case of COVID-19, when someone left within the hospital and their family couldn't say goodbye to the person, and obviously they were affected. And sometimes, you see, they were given a very bad piece of information. Don't talk about their mother with the family because she died. So that's a wrong approach, and that's why we have to do something about it. And the final bullet here is adequate remuneration of experts, crisis interventionists. So that's very important for them so that they may provide adequate quality services. Thank you very much.
My také děkujeme za příspěvek.
Thank you very much for your contribution. And now I'd like to pass the floor to Mr. Miroslav Bubeník, who is a head of psychotherapeutic team and child crisis center. So over to you, and we look forward to your presentation. How much time you need for reception?
Takže také přeju všem.
Very good afternoon to you all. Thank you for your presentations. I will join in on behalf of our center and the Counseling Center for Victims of Violence. I will introduce ourselves. We provide psychological intervention, psychotherapeutical and social service to clients who experience domestic violence and children that were traumatized by, for instance, domestic violence, abuse, etc. We are a psychological center, and I will be talking about Children Crisis Center and the impact of the project financed in cooperation with NROS and Velux on our work. So it was reflected in our work, and I will mention our results. We are a registered crisis service, and we also open social onboarding service for 22. We run programs, therapeutic programs that work with aggression. We've got program for aggressors in families where there is aggression in relationship. We provide psychological intervention to aggressors. We strive for prevention of violence. And we are a university center of several universities, and our project reflects in our cooperation. We cooperate with Norwegian Center. Our trip there was financed by this project. We started a nice cooperation, and towards the end of my presentation, I'll mention our future project to be implemented with our Norwegian colleagues. I have to apologize my colleague, Barbara Jakobsen. We have invited her to approach you online. She had to apologize. She felt sick. She is unable to speak. She is a clinical psychologist in Tromsø and Oslo. She works with families impacted by violence, domestic violence, etc. So she sends her regards, and she will check the link to our today's meeting, and she gave us her presentation, and we will download it there. You can hear it and you can read it later on. Our target groups, it is the tortured, abused and neglected children, victims of violence and criminal activities. We work with parents who have a divorce conflict which impacts psychosocial well-being of a child. We also work with aggressors. We cooperate with the social and legal protection of child departments. We cooperate with the police, courts, intervention centers and psychiatric clinic in Hradec Králové and other towns and cities. We provide intervention, and we have provided intervention within the frame of the Velux and NROS project. We focus on psychodiagnostic of children and young adults, post-stress disorder, PTSD, psychological advisory, psychotherapeutical intervention, social work, and awareness raising for primary schools pupils. This is very important as a prevention. And here we mention our cooperation with ATV Norway. Here we were helped by NROS and VLAX funding. And this included meeting with ATV experts in Oslo. We have met with them, we debated the interventions, violence in relationships, in families. We discussed our successes, failures, tools that we use. We also visited Ministry of Justice of Norway, the Norwegian Directorate for Children, Youth and Family Affairs, and we also focused on the systemic issues in Norway, their approach to help provided to children, simply function of the system. That was one focus. And then there was another focus that was the impact of violence on children exposed to traumas. We also talked about the methods they use in Norway, and we took our lesson and we were able to offer some methodologies that we use. They were new to Norwegians, so it was an exchange of experience. And as for the rights of children, we focused on the best interest of child and child welfare, and we focused on, let's say, all the related aspects. And then the best interest of child, satisfaction of their basic needs. We compared the perception of basic needs in the Czech Republic and in Norway. You know, in the Czech Republic, when we cooperate with the courts and the bodies of social and legal protection of child, we see that these institutions are unable to support the best interest of child. And sometimes it is paradoxical because our center, within the system of interventions provided, we sometimes track procedures that are detrimental for children, that harm them. So we debated possible improvement with our Norwegian colleagues. This is a definition of child welfare or well-being. That is, that we have to provide such care that also takes regard of the rights of parents, families, and caretakers. So we know what is mentioned in this UN convention and what was the output or benefit of the project. It was support of interventions, new experience, and we were able to provide psychological intervention and improve availability of early intervention to children exposed to violence. We applied new approaches that we brought from Norway, but I'll touch upon that later on. We got basic information and we were able to get the helicopter picture of this area in Norway, and we increased our awareness and we learned how to improve the awareness of the Czech society. So, what was the benefit for our workers?
New experience from Norwegian environment, new contacts at both professional and systemic levels, new knowledge from the area of research on the violence impact on the children and young adults, new methods of expert interventions. We also sort of brought home the Norwegian methodology on the cooperation achievement with OSPOD authority. It's in Norway. It is called Barnevernet. So we also learned about methodologies in therapeutical assessment for working with families affected by violence. So this is a very important. Therapeutic assessment is very much used in Norway, and it is tailor-made to the needs of the affected family. So it's not only the child as such, but also the surrounding of the child. And we also brought home a certain policy of the early intervention through mobile consultancy center. And so another benefit of this project is the deepening of cooperation between the Czech Republic and Norway in the area of crisis intervention. We also started to work with the Czech Cabinet Office, and we work on certain research activities, and Norway and Czech Republic have launched a new project in this field. Well, mobile consultancy center, that's another impact of this project funded by NROS Foundation and Velux Funds. Well, it is true that we found a new inspiration in this because in Norway, the victims of domestic violence get certain support on spot. It is aimed mainly at remote areas where such victims have no access to the early intervention services. So we just quite a specific vehicle. You can see the picture thereof, and we just use this car and go to places where the child was exposed to let's say, a conflict between parents, or where someone from the family died. And for instance, this is a picture from Stenberg, where a 16-year-old girl wanted to deal with her problems via self-harm. And this was also a sort of inspiration from Norway. So we use this mobile consultancy car till today. We have drafted a methodology for offering such a care in the field, and it works till now, and a lot of clients are really interested. It was a direct impact of the project, and I think that the legal and social protection, children legal and protection authorities and courts are very interested in this as well. And what was inspirational for Norwegian colleagues? They also learned our concept of practical teaching the medical students, so not only medical students, but also students in psychology and social work, focusing on work with children exposed to violence. So such students usually undergo the practical training with us. We have presented this approach in Norway, and they liked it very much. And they wanted to present it at a university or in some co-working place, ATV. And this is where I see another potential for cooperation. So this should result in training new experts in the field of domestic violence. It is true that many students lack necessary tools for working with trauma, and this is what could be added to this to the new project, and this is what we communicated to our colleagues in Norway. So our Norwegian colleagues asked us to cooperate on a specific book that is called Violence Can Be Stopped, and we could jointly add a specific chapter called Therapy for Persons Exposed to the Violence or Causing the Violence in Close Relationship. So we studied the impact of the violence on children and young adults, on their development. We worked a lot on methods. We discussed them, focusing on families with a longer divorce process history, how we could help such families. In our town of Hradec, we have a new project with Justin von Habe, focusing on group therapies. It means it is a group therapy focused at families in divorce. So this is quite a nice picture showing that a divorcing family may just show the child or children as a weapon, being in the very middle point between the two parents. So this is the topic we discussed with our Norwegian colleagues as well. Further research, we see there is overlapping of partnership violence and violence against children. Then other studies show that children with who experience physical violence are more frequently seen as potential suiciders, etc. Here we have some results of the studies showing that children exposed to domestic violence show more emotional and behavioral problems. The incidence of post-trauma symptoms in children exposed to violence is much more frequent. Here, the picture showing sensitive developmental period, showing preliminary evidence for sensitive periods in the effect of childhood sexual abuse on regional brain development. So in the sensitive periods in the child's development, if the child is abused or exposed to the violence, it may lead to the organic change of amygdala development. What is the future development? Perhaps we could speak about a sort of umbrella organization for crisis intervention. We see further work on standards for working with children at risks. There are already there should be certain minimum multidisciplinary standards drafted. Professionalization of workplaces aimed at crisis intervention for children, professionalization of legal and social authorities, protection authorities, etc. Cochem model. Well, Barbara wanted to be with you today, and she would talk about the training of young persons in the area of crisis intervention. Would be a very good opportunity for cooperation. Education of students from the fields of psychology, medicine, social work, in improvement of working environment for providing expert intervention and support to fundraising to organizations providing crisis intervention. That's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Já mnohokrát děkuji.
Thank you so much for the very last contribution of our meeting. So allow me to say 3 sentences by conclusion. Thank you so much, all speakers. Thank you for the inspiration for the future you gave us. Minimum success we will have is that people who wish to support us know how to support us. And as we heard, trauma is a transgeneration issue. So if we pay attention to minimization of traumas, we will strengthen the future society for our children. My children, let's hope, will live better lives with reduced pathologies and reduced incidents of domestic violence. Let's hope it's gonna happen. I wish the NGO sector patience for the future, in particular the crisis intervention and early intervention and care. Please continue your effort, keep on providing your wonderful service. Let's not wait for future challenges. Let's not wait for funding. We support you. We will always support you. Thank you, the Velux Foundation, for your 7 years support. Thank you, Andros colleagues, for taking you through the period, for helping you throughout the implementation of your projects. Thank you very much, online listeners, and let me open social part of our meeting. So let us share our best practice outside our broadcast. So thank you very much, all participants. I hope you enjoyed our meeting as well as I did. I look forward to another opportunity to meet you. Thank you very much.